In the midst of craziness, no matter which side of the pond you're on, in Israel, in America, we both got election problems, but you know what? It's Hanukkah, and it's time for a Chag Sameach. Hanukkah, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Counting down. It's barely more than 24 hours
Yeah.
now while we're recording because it's Wednesday afternoon here, and it is going to be the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah, of course, is a time of great miracles, and of course, we're all hoping for a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
That's for
Well,
sure.
I got a question for you to start out. I was reminded of something a couple of days ago. In Israel, is it a tradition to watch the Rugrats Hanukkah special?
Sadly, no. But those of us who have been initiated, and the fact that they had overheard the meaning of Hanukkah as opposed to the meaning of Hanukkah, I found absolutely brilliant. And a Maccabees got to do what a Maccabees got to do.
Is there a greater saying in the whole world? I mean, and I'm not a Rugrats fan. I never watched Rugrats. I thought it was really insulting to my intelligence. You know, I grew up with such intelligent things like the Roadrunner and the Coyote, but you know, but I mean, that's one for the books. And so I think that I'm going to have to break down this year and listen and watch this one again, because it's been a few years. I've broken the tradition. Got to get back to it.
It's wonderful. Thank you for reminding me of that. I've been putting aside all these little vignettes, little Hanukkah songs to post up on Facebook coming up. It's a great time. It's a great time, not only in the history of the Jewish people, the people of Israel, but as we need to repeatedly point out, that Hanukkah and the miracles that enabled us to win not only preserved the Jewish people, but created the situation where everyone today who is a Christian or is a Messianic Hebrew roots believer can trace to Hanukkah in 165 before the Common Era. Had we not been successful, there would never have been a Miriam raising her son Yeshua. The Jewish people would have no longer existed from the face of the earth.
Yeah. And the Torah that, the people that are, most of the folks who are listening to us, us being restored to the Torah, if the will of Antiochus Epiphanes had gone forth, there would not be a Torah to be restored to.
Nope.
You mentioned Christianity, and this has been a struggle for people, because Hanukkah is that Jewish holiday, and so my statement to them is really kind of ironic, that if it were not for Hanukkah, there would be no Christmas.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And it's too subtle, believe it or not, for most people.
Yeah.
Now, subtle is a word that I typically don't even know how to pronounce. I don't even know what the word actually means most of the time.
This is true.
But Hanukkah is incredibly significant. The meaning and the significance is lost on most people.
Yeah.
I would say probably 10 out of every 9.
Mm-hmm.
And, I saw a thing recently that I had saved from years ago that said something like, if you can't devote your whole life to Jewish extremism, at least do it for 8 days.
Okay, I guess that.
I want to clarify to people, the reason that we keep saying Jewish as opposed to the more global, all the people of Israel, is because our brothers and sisters of the Northern Kingdom had been dispersed back in 722 before the Common Era. Mm-hmm. The only identifiable remnant of the children of Israel at that point in history was the Jewish people. And the fight wasn't merely, I say merely, against the Greeks, but against those Jews who had Hellenized.
Yeah.
And that's another lesson for today when we have so many Jewish people, particularly in the United States of America, who just don't quite get Israel. And they, I saw a thing today that almost caused me to throw up. It was a Zoom conference of all these ultra-liberal American Jews who all had signs in front of them that said Jew, not Zionist.
Hmm.
And again, the definition of Zionism, very simply, the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, given to us by the God of Israel. Period. Yeah. And drop the microphone. That's all you need to say.
Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, history repeats itself, except for you won't be there this year. I'm actually going to be filling in for Barry over at Gates to Zion in Columbia. And so what was it, 2 years ago, you were here during Hanukkah? And
yes.
We were actually over there, and we went to the Hanukkah celebration, the lighting of the menorah at the Capitol in Columbia.
Yes.
I mean, probably most, as you would say, 10 out of 9 people had no real clue that evening was very difficult for you and for me. Right. It was basically a group of Jewish leaders standing up and saying how American they were. There was really nothing said about Israel as a land. There was nothing said about Torah. We might as well have just gone to Krispy Kreme and had jelly donuts. It would have been about the same spiritual meaning to most of the people. Without some, it might have been more.
The idea that Hanukkah has been diluted in their minds to some festival of freedom, like this vague festival of freedom, the light in the midst of darkness, light during, almost the winter solstice kind of thing, is so, everyone knows that Mattathias was offered a lot of gold and whatever. All he had to do was eat a little bit of this little piggy. And instead, he slaughtered the Hellenist Jew that was offering that and the Greek soldiers and led the revolt. Now, the thing that's amazing is, could you imagine if every Jewish person who ate the flesh of swine was to be accountable for that? I mean, one of the hardest things that I've shared with people in the Hebrew Roots movement is when they don't understand that the Jewish guy that they know from work or the Jewish woman that was in their class in college, they have no idea of kashrut, of what, kosher food is or isn't. And, it doesn't matter. But, as people who are listening now are saying like, well, are you guys going to get to exactly what Hanukkah means? The answer is yes. But Mike is in the midst of looking up a particular verse. So we're going to let him do that first.
Well, I was just going, Isaiah 65, talking about the pig meat. They sit among the graves and spend the night in caverns. They eat pig meat, and their pots hold soup made from disgusting things. I guess that was speaking to the Jews in Louisiana that are eating gumbo. But, Hanukkah, I got something to, how did you do this? I mean, this must have been a plan or a plot with you and your mother at birth or prior to, that you would get a name that has a at each end of it, which would coincide with Hanukkah, which would have a at each side of it. How do you do that, man?
Okay, well, for those listening saying, what the heck is he saying? The root of my name, Hanoch, is the same as Hanukkah,
Yeah.
which means dedication or rededication, or, in modern Hebrew, chinuch, also the same root, is education or educator. Now, how did I get the name like that no American person who doesn't speak Hebrew could ever pronounce? It's because my grandmother, my father's mother, Aliyah Shalom of blessed memory, her name was Hannah. So they wanted a name that sounded similar. This is the way things are done in America, in the Jewish community. So they wound up with Hanoch. So for me, it's really special because this is a holiday all about me.
And,
No,
and there
it's not
and,
all about me.
and there
But,
you prove it. The world does revolve around Hanukkah. I mean,
well, at least for the next 8 days,
okay. So
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah,
Yeah,
to me, I mean, people, it becomes kind of a Christmas alternative to some, the giving of presents for 8 days and the
yeah.
lights and the eating and all of these things. I began, I guess it's probably been close to 15 years ago, to look at Hanukkah more as God's Veterans Day, a time to remember those
Right.
who have given their lives. I go specifically to the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, which is known as the Hall of Faith. And this is a time to really consider that the life that we have today is not one that we have actually fought for, though we may have our own battles. But the life
Great.
that we have today is because of others who have fought for us. Go ahead.
No, that's very, very true. You know, most people are, in America, it is very much the Jewish Christmas.
Hmm.
Um, and what's interesting is when my daughter was young, when they were growing up, I would only go for small, meaningful, and generally educationally based gifts. So that meant a book. That meant when the girls were really young, getting pencils monogrammed with their name on it. And I remember Ayala, who you know so well, she sends regards. And she said to me, she said, Abba, can I keep these? So I wanted to say, no, we're going to look for someone else by the name of Ayala Rivka, and we're going to give it to her because she might be more deserving. I mean, it took planning, but it was to be something meaning of the oil for 8 days. In front of us, in the Siddur, in the daily prayer book, there's this, there's a prayer that's said during each of the 8 days of Hanukkah, and it says, for that because Hashem delivered us from the hands of the mightiest nation in the world. The few beat the many, the weak beat the powerful, all that stuff. And then it mentions, oh yeah, and the miracle of the oil lasting.
Yeah.
But in reality, you have to go to Masechet Tanit, the tractate Ta'anit, where it speaks of that it took 8 days to rededicate Hanukkah, the name, the altar in the Beit HaMikdash, because it had been used for pagan pig sacrifices.
Yeah. So when it comes,
But people want to focus on the oil because the oil is, it's cute.
yeah, so there becomes this discussion of the legend of the oil. Is this a legend? Did this actually happen? I think that is about the most irrelevant discussion regarding Hanukkah that there is, because
Absolutely.
it's not. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't make any difference to me whether that happened or not. It was the intent, and this goes to something that both of us are pretty passionate about. It is the intent of the rededication of the house of Elohim upon this earth. The one structure that stands as a testament
Bam.
of his
That's it.
faithfulness, of covenant, and numerous other things. I mean, this should be a time that all of us should be, turning toward the Harabite, the Temple Mount, and praying together that that building, that temple, would be rebuilt soon and in our day, as again a testament of the word of Elohim that's been spoken, that he would do so.
Absolutely. On the one spot on earth that he chose to rest his presence.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's but that then ceases to be the universalist, liberal, all kinds of, we've diluted the meaning of things over the years. And I, remember when I still lived in America, more than 11 years ago, there was the beginning of the movement that referred to itself as, let's put the Christ back in Christmas. And what was fascinating to me as the outsider growing up in an Irish Catholic neighborhood, and that was in the era when, the only thing on TV was the Yule log burning, there was no cable or any of that stuff, is I still remember when stores were closed all day Christmas. But like Memorial Day, like Veterans Day, it had to shift to a commercial, almost nonsensical focus.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between Labor Day and Memorial Day? I mean, it's just a bunch of sales. Whether it was Lincoln's birthday, Washington's birthday, or President's Day, it's just sales.
Yeah, if it wasn't for those days, there would be no day that we could buy a mattress on sale.
Well, you'd have to wait for political riots to be able to get your flat screen TV. So, yeah.
So maybe we could start a movement, Hanok, of put the temple back in Hanukkah.
Wow. It's interesting. I put up the graphic that my dear friend Troy LeBlanc had made for me. The picture. I'm very flattered this year. People say that guy actually looks like me, or maybe I look like him. I don't know. And the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, with the menorah of the temple, the menorah, the seven-branched candelabra. So, as you may have seen, I posted it on a couple of sites and groups, and someone said, "Is that even the right menorah?" It's like, and then I realized how far we've come from our roots, from the centrality of the meaning of Hanukkah.
It's interesting that this year of 2020, as every year, of course, ends with the festival of Hanukkah, a time of dedication. And if there has ever been a year in recent history that people should recommit to the dedication of the Maccabees, to read the account of what these men and the women that stood with them went through. One of my favorite places to go in Israel is Malay Avana. I couldn't remember where it was. But that's what happens when you're not in Israel for a whole year. You forget where you're at. But it was at the base of the valley there. Right. Look out over it. The first battle of the Maccabees happened. You know, and these men went to battle the same as Gideon, the same as many other great people that we read about in Scripture, being outnumbered over 13-1 as they went into battle. These were men of incredible faith. These were men that were they were risking their very lives, and it was because of their risking of their life that we can have life today. I mean, if it was not for Hanukkah, you and I wouldn't be doing a video. There's so much of what would be gone out of life today if it had not been for the Maccabees. The very calendar, the very Gregorian calendar that has the, you know, the BC and the AD, and you know whether or BC and after the Common Era, the before. I mean, the calendar is based upon an event that is tied to Hanukkah. How much of life is tied to, you know, these people made a difference in history. Throw the theology to the side, okay? These people made a difference in history.
And again, they never, any rational person would have said, there's no way we, a bunch of farmers, are going to defeat the mightiest army in the world. We continue to hang out in Modi'in and hope that they'll stay in Jerusalem or come and bother you.
Yeah, yeah.
It is the time of rededication, and that's the one thing I would like people to walk away from this, with, is saying, now's the time to dust ourselves off. There will be, it's funny with the different counting of years. The BC that people have been referring to is before COVID, before Corona. And there will be a time of after. Yeah. And who is using this time to prepare? Who is solidifying their family? Who is solidifying their own learning, their communities, their fellowship? Who is actively saving and preparing for the day that flights to Israel become available? And it's going to happen, as my mother of blessed memory would have said, we're closer than further.
There you go. To me, this comes down to something. Hanukkah is about maybe the greatest takeaway for me of Hanukkah this year is asking a question. Are we fighting for the right thing? What made the Maccabees successful? It wasn't that they were, it wasn't that God was on their side, but they got on his, because they figured out what was worth fighting for. I see in these days, Hanok, and maybe I'm included in this, but I see people fighting for the wrong thing, fighting for things that in the end are meaningless. There is only one thing in life that's worth fighting for, and that is his kingdom. I see nothing else.
Absolutely. There's one other thing, when people argue about, the lessons of Hanukkah or the meaning of Hanukkah. There's one thing that I heard a few years ago, kind of tongue in cheek, but it has a lesson in it too. That what is the miracle of Hanukkah? The fact that Mattathias said something, set a direction, and all of his children followed him. For all of us who are parents, sadly, we can't keep our kids in bubble wrap. And they, and it hurts us when they stumble and make mistakes and choose paths that are not what we would have chosen. But you know what? we made the same or similar mistakes, and we grew from working our way through it and from it. And we have to have the faith in the children that we raised with love to be able to do that same thing too.
Good word. Good word. All right. Well, in the process of this week, remember there should be donuts in moderation. Okay. Just saying. Latkes in moderation. And if you want a nice Southern twang to your Hanukkah celebration, make your latkes from sweet potatoes.
Show enough.
You got it. Maybe some collards on the side.
Always.
All right. We'll talk next week.
Regards. Bye-bye.